It was the winter of 1970 when Carolyn and Roger Perron and their 5 children moved into the house of their dreams in Harrisville, Rhode Island. It was a large 14-room farmhouse with 200 acres of land and seemed like the perfect quiet place for them to raise their young daughters. But it would seem as though it was not meant to be, as almost immediately after moving in, they would begin to experience some very strange occurrences. This was just the start of a harrowing ordeal that would involve spirit attacks, spectral witches, and a dark history. Their dream would soon turn into a nightmare. It began harmlessly enough, with objects going missing only to turn up in strange places, or the children hearing scratching noises or other strange sounds in the walls, or in the rooms when no one was in there, as well as the sound of a broom sweeping the kitchen floor late at night. Carolyn then began to find small, neatly placed piles of dirt around the house, even after just cleaning it, and this graduated to the scared children saying they could sometimes see shadowy figures lurking around at night, as well as what seemed to be the presence of a ghostly young boy, and that of a man with a crooked smile who would watch them from the shadows as they played. Although the parents were a bit sceptical of all these claims at first, this changed when it got even more frightening. Carolyn woke up one evening to find the spectral image of an old woman hanging over her bed. The woman's neck was bent at a strange angle as if broken, and her hair was full of cobwebs. The old lady warned her and her family to move out before vanishing. It seemed that there were several other spirits also inhabiting the home, and Roger Perron also had his own encounters with these entities, such as a presence following him around that smelt like rotting meat and which mostly prowled the area of the dirt cellar floor. The ghostly incidents would also escalate, with furniture moving across the floor or even whole beds levitating off the ground. This was enough to convince the Perrons that something was very wrong with the house and that it was haunted. Carolyn began researching the history of their new home and its location. She learned that the house itself was known locally as the Old Arnold Estate and had been in the possession of the Arnold family for 8 generations before coming into the possession of the Perrons. What made it chilling was that she would uncover records and information from local historians that indicated that many of the family members had died there, often under mysterious circumstances or violently, including murder, suicide, drowning, and even an instance where 4 people froze to death outside during a harsh winter. The mother of the family had hanged herself in the barn. Another relative had committed suicide in the attic, and in one case, 11-year-old Prudence Arnold was tortured and killed by a farmhand. It was all very horrifying, and if there had been any doubt in her mind that the house was haunted, these doubts quickly went away as she flipped through the grim history outlined in those dusty archives. The most interesting and most sinister history Carolyn was able to dig up was that in the 1800s, a woman named Bathsheba Thayer had lived on the property with her husband Judson Sherman, and according to her research, this woman was a well-known witch in the area. Much of the folklore on Bathsheba has a malevolent air about it, such as she beat her farmhands, practiced black magic, had sacrificed her own baby to the devil by stabbing her in the base of the skull with a needle, and that she had lost 3 other children at very young ages under mysterious circumstances, possibly murdered by their own mother, going on later to hang herself from a tree right behind her house, although one story suggests that she had died from a mysterious disease, and, according to yet another story, Bathsheba's body had turned to stone upon her death, something which has been dismissed as just silly storytelling. Carolyn became convinced that the old crone she had seen prowling about their home was none other than the sly Bathsheba herself, and it was very obvious to them that this spirit was filled with hate and anger. The hauntings became more vicious over time. The children would have their hair pulled or be hit by unseen hands. A spirit would follow them around, telling them that dead soldiers were buried in the wall. And the old witch would make regular frightening appearances, lashing out at them or throwing objects, even at one point stabbing Carolyn with a needle. This was enough for the desperate family to reach out to Ed and Lorraine Warren, who would soon witness much of this paranormal activity for themselves. The strangest and most terrifying thing the Warrens allegedly realised was that, in addition to the house being haunted by numerous other spirits, the most sinister and intimidating one, Bathsheba, seemed to be actually trying to possess Carolyn Perron. They would claim that they had performed a séance in order to contact Bathsheba, and that at the time the malicious entity had to jump into Carolyn to take her over. Her daughter, Andrea Perron, said in later years, "I thought I was going to pass out. My mother began to speak a language not of this world, in a voice not her own. Her chair levitated and she was thrown across the room." This was apparently witnessed by everyone present, and shortly after the séance, Roger Perron became convinced that the Warrens were only making things worse and kicked them out. He could have been right. The Warrens' presence seemed to provoke the evil spirit, with the hauntings escalating and continuing for a full 10 years before the Perrons were finally able to move away in 1980. The story has gone on to become the basis for the hit 2013 horror film The Conjuring, which is loosely based on the alleged real-life events and on which the late Lorraine Warren herself actually worked as an advisor. It's one hell of a story to say the least, and some wonder just how much truth there is in any of it. One of the criticisms aimed at this odd case is that pretty much everything we know about it comes from the 3-volume book series House of Darkness and Light, which was written by the oldest Perron daughter, Andrea. In it, she documents a whole harrowing supernatural ordeal. But this is practically the sole source for the story, and it's unclear how many embellishments might have been made or how clearly she remembers certain details. Another problem is that many of the historical so-called facts about the property and the witch don't really add up. For instance, while Bathsheba Sherman was a very real person, records indicate that she lived to a ripe old age. One of her children grew to adulthood, and there is no concrete evidence at all to show that she was ever involved with witchcraft and black magic, or that she had ever actually been put on trial for brutally murdering an infant. Also rather controversial is the involvement of the Warrens, with the pair being accused over the years of hoaxes and trickery, although they insisted to their deaths that the story was true. But what about the hauntings? If the house was really inhabited by these restless spirits, they should have been around even after the Perrons left. According to Andrea Perron, they were, and she said in an interview, "Everyone who has lived in the house that we know of has experienced this. Some have left screaming and running for their lives. The man who moved in to begin the restoration on the house when we sold it left screaming without his car, without his tools, without his clothing. He never went back to the house, and consequently the people who owned it, the adjacent landowners, never moved in, and it sat vacant for years." It does seem that some of the subsequent owners of the property have had minor experiences that they cannot explain, but whether it has ever been as intense as the Perrons claim has not been completely demonstrated, and some owners have not mentioned anything strange happening at all. Is this house really haunted? And was this family really targeted by malevolent forces? The house still sits there to this day. I guess no one but the Perrons will ever know the full truth. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.